Hey, welcome back to another episode of Tech Talk. I'm your host, Jeff Hootselle. I'm the Chief Cloud Officer with AuditMax. If you guys have ever watched the show before or listened to us, you know that Tech Talk is a show where we talk to CIOs from around the country, folks working with all kinds of different dynamic and really interesting organizations, and get their viewpoints on the state of technology and really what's happening out in the world. So we always have fantastic guests. Today we got a really special guest. We've got a gentleman, Doug Duncan with Columbia Insurance Group, as the CIO. He's going to be joining us today from Columbia, Missouri. So, Doug, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate being here today. Great to talk with you.
Yeah, good to see you. Hey, from the beginning, I'd love to hear a little bit more about Columbia Insurance Group and maybe tell the folks that are watching and listening to us here what you guys are all about.
Absolutely. Columbia Insurance Group is a mid-sized property and casualty carrier. That means that we insure things like buildings burning down or slip and falls or auto and things like that. And we focus primarily on small businesses. So the Main Street sort of business. We operate throughout the Midwest and into the Southeast. We operate in 14 states, and the company's been in business for a long time. It's 140 years old. So been around a
Wow.
bit.
Yeah, 140 years is pretty impressive. You look at the stats on businesses and the survival rate to be around for a century and a half is pretty amazing. I'm interested from when you're talking about being around for that long, it's a lot of evolutions and reiterations of the company and things like that. From an IT perspective in your role, what does that look like? Have you guys, everybody talks about digital transformation and what's involved with that, but again, if you're talking about a company that's had the history of that, that length and that longevity, what has that iterations been like for you guys from a technology perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine back in the early days, a technology upgrade would have been going to typewriters.
Right.
So this is a lot has happened in the last, let's say, 50 years, but it has changed a lot. I mean, there don't have to hash through the history of how computers took over the world, but the automation, the fact that we can come in with technology and take away repetitive work, manual work, things that don't add a lot of value, make them go faster, better, easier, more efficient has been a huge boon. And for Columbia Insurance, that's been an ongoing process. Certainly, we've been, with all of the other companies in the industry and taking advantage of new systems and technologies that come out. But in the last 3 or 4 years, in the time that I've been with Columbia Insurance, we've really focused on the tech stack and making sure that we're using the best and latest tools so that we can build the types of the front ends, the interfaces, the interactions with our customers that they've come to expect. With companies like Amazon and how you can search so easily on Google and all of that, the expectations from the consumers is so much higher. And so to keep up with that and to try to stay with the edge of that has been challenging, but it's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Now, so Doug, in your role as CIO, I mean, you're really responsible for kind of bridging that gap between, you know, what's, what's available from a technology perspective and all the possibilities, and really marrying that with the business, what they do. What's that experience been like for you, and how have you approached that as far as, getting the business to buy in as you've gone back and kind of looked at, how do we continue to develop our stack and make those changes, make those investments, and that. How do
Yeah.
you communicate that back to the business to get their buy-in?
Well, I mean, it can absolutely be a challenge, particularly if there's been any sort of track record, which honestly, in any company, there's going to be some of this, of IT projects that have failed or they just haven't lived up to expectations. So it really starts with trust. And in my case, I came in as a new guy in 2017 here at this company, and they didn't know me, right? I mean, they had high hopes, perhaps, but they didn't know who I was or what I could deliver. So I couldn't, on day one, just start doing great things and saying, "Yeah, this is going to happen. Everybody's going to be really happy. Let's do it." I had to build that trust. I had to have some small wins. I had to establish that there was a framework in place that made sense and made sense for the company. And so we first addressed the process. We addressed the organizational structure. We addressed the teams and how they interacted. And then as that built a little bit of momentum, then we could build up to bigger and bigger changes within the actual technology stack. And so we were able to, for example, replace our honestly 90s sort of Java approach to how we develop and host to a more modern cloud-based system using React and Node, and use web services and API calls, and even into DevOps and fun stuff like that. And it really started showing results, but it didn't happen overnight, and it had to happen in somewhat of a gradual way, because otherwise the change would have just been overwhelming for our business or for any business that's going through something like this.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been in the company a few years now, and it sounds like you initially made that smart investment to kind of look back at the stack and make some changes there and update those things. How has that paid off for you in 2020 with everything we've seen and all that's gone on over the past year?
Yeah. Well, a great example is well, I say recently, it's been over a year, but we did a major upgrade to our quoting system, the tool that insurance, our agents in this case, use to be able to figure out how much certain types of coverage will cost, what the different particulars are, generate the forms and all of that. And that was normally, or at least in the past, that would have been a 2-3 year project if it completed at all. And the first pass of this, before we did the tech stack upgrade, did take more time. But once we did that upgrade, once we put into place these new tools, these new processes, we were able to go so much faster. We were able to deliver more incrementally, more quickly, with a higher level of quality. The level of defects was virtually zero using this approach, and we were able to put good tools in the hands of our customers much more quickly. So now that quoting system can generate a quote in a matter of minutes, where in the past it would have been hours or days. You can see on screen what it's going to look like. We're even able to institute a level of hands-off processing, what we call straight through. So that means certain kinds of coverages, certain kinds of business doesn't even have to go directly through an underwriter. The system is able to automate the underwriting decisions based on the business rules and gets a great quality product out to our customer very quickly.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I'm interested to hear kind of your role. I mean, have you seen a big change in what that role is for a CIO over the past few years? I mean, we've talked to a lot of folks that, in years past, it was always the challenge of, like we talked about earlier, how do we get IT, how do we get the business to look at IT as a strategic asset and not like a utility and just keeping the lights on and keeping the wheels moving type thing, but more of a strategic partner. It sounds like you've bridged that gap pretty well, but as far as how you view your role and your responsibility to the organization, how has that evolved and changed over the last year or two?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this probably has been the goal for a long time, but I certainly see myself as a business partner, as a key part of what's going to make the business successful. An insurance company, any company, frankly, is going to have a challenge operating these days without a strong technology presence. And if the attitude of the technology part of the company is simply, I'm going to make sure that the email's working and that you can, get to the internet and basic things like that, that's probably not going to be enough. You have to add value. You have to find a way to just not make your people, your company, your employees, your customers happy, but to actually add value to everything they do. If you're not doing that, then as a CIO, you're not going to be successful. You're at best treading water, and really that won't last for long. You have to make the business better in everything you do.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I think that's a great phrase to live by there. So, Doug, we're running out of time, but the last question I wanted to ask you about is, as you look forward in kind of the next year or two from a technology perspective, what area of technology has got you kind of most excited? Are you guys kind of making the most investments in for the company?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, and the go-to is things, artificial intelligence and quantum computing and all that. And that sounds great. That's cool stuff. Eventually, that'll have a place. But for us, it's stuff that's been around for a while. I mean, going to the cloud, virtualizing things, and I'm not talking about the data, but I'm talking about the actual processes. So there's something called serverless. Essentially, in IT, you have a box, you program it to do things, you put data in, it puts out results, and you're good. And going to cloud isn't just virtualizing that. Going to the cloud is actually breaking up all the different pieces of that box, not just the memory, not just the components, but actually the processes, so that if you need to go out and get something as simple as looking up an address, of course, there's a lot of searches online for that, but you can make that a process that you don't have to worry about how it works. You simply access the process in a very organized way. And that whole serverless cloud-based approach to computing using something called APIs, won't get into the detail, but it's simply a better, smarter, faster, cheaper, more efficient way of managing business processes. And that's the most exciting for me, and that's where I spend a lot of time and effort trying to get us better at.
Yeah, that's terrific. I think it's some good advice, Doug. I think your approach to how you've married up IT in the business has obviously been really, really successful. And kudos to you and your team for all that you guys have done and kind of the culture you guys have built as an organization. So We definitely appreciate it, and definitely appreciate getting your advice and your wisdom here and your feedback. But for folks that want to find out more about Columbia Insurance Group, where's the best place for them to go to learn more?
Yeah, well, we're on the internet. We have our site. It's colinsgrp.com. So you can certainly look us up there. More than happy to talk with you. If you want to give me a call, you can find me on LinkedIn, Douglas Duncan. More than happy to connect with you. And if nothing else, just have a chat about technology. That's always good fun.
That's awesome. Well, Doug, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And thank you guys for tuning in as well. If you guys would like to see more interviews like this one with Doug, you can go to auditmax.com and see our whole library of hundreds of these discussions and interviews. You can also find our podcasts online at your favorite resource for those. We appreciate you joining us and look forward to talking to you again soon.